Thank you guys for joining me today. In this video, I will continue our construction planning and scheduling course, but I will focus on scheduling. So previously, in our previous videos, I covered the different planning techniques in terms of bar chart uh, and network models, activity on arrows, and activity on nodes. In this video, I will start to do scheduling for the project using the network activity on node. Later in the next or in the following videos, I will repeat scheduling for the project using activity on arrow. But right now, let's focus on scheduling using activity on node. What is the meaning of scheduling? Scheduling is the development of project timetable of construction operations. That means we are going to talk about time, when we can finish the project, when we can start each activity. So the term or the question when means time. So the importance of scheduling for any project, we can figure out the activity, each activity duration. We can figure out the total project duration. We can figure out what is the starting and the ending time of each activity. And we can define something called critical activities. And then we can define the critical path. We will talk about this in more details in the next video. We can conduct a time reduction if needed. We can define the needed resources when we need to order concrete, when we need to order bricks, when we need to rent an equipment, time table for the activities. We need to define the calendar dates for the project. So we need to answer the question when. This is the meaning of scheduling. We have few concepts here and a few symbols. D represent the duration. ES means early start, early start. EF, early finish. LS, late start. LF, late finish. TF, total float. FF, free float. So if you would like to put these symbols, I will explain the definitions of each, but if you would like to put these definitions on each activity, remember, for activity on node, I told you we are going to divide this rectangle to different parts. First of all, here is the name of the activity. Here is the short description of the activity. And here is the duration of the activity. So this is the code or name or symbol for the activity. Here is the duration, D, this one. And keep in your mind, this is the early start of the activity. Here is the early finish of the activity. So I'm gonna put a number here which represent the early start. I'm gonna put a number here which represent early finish. We have another two numbers here, late start and late finish. We will have another two numbers here represent late start and late finish. So let me explain. And also at the top here, I'm gonna put total float and free float like this. This is the final activity after you put the scheduling. Keep in your mind the early start means how soon can the activity start. from the name early start. This is the earliest time we can start the activity. Early finish, early finish. How soon can the activity finish? The earliest time to finish the activity. This is the meaning of early start and the early finish. The early time to start your activity, the early time to finish your activity. We have another definition for, we have another concept for these times. LS means late start. Late start, how late can the activity start? The latest time we can start the activity, the latest time. Late finish is the late, how late can the activity finish? The latest time to finish the activity. That makes sense? So keep in your mind, these definitions are very important to understand the meaning. We are going to put numbers here. These numbers represent very important definitions. Early start, this is the number, the time. Where is the earliest time to start your activity? And this time represent the earliest time to finish the activity. The number here is the latest time to start the activity. And the number here is the latest time to finish your activity. Does that make sense? We have total float and we have free float. These definitions are very important. Total float means is the total amount of time an activity on the schedule network diagram can be delayed without affecting the project duration or the project finish date. The total duration of the project. So the total float is the flexibility. You can delay any activity without affecting the final duration of the project. But for free float, represent the amount of time that a scheduled activity can be delayed. So this one can be delayed and this one can be delayed, but free float without delaying the next or the following or the successor activities. Without delaying the early start date of any immediate successor activity. So free float is the flexibility to delay your activity without affecting the immediate following activity. But the total float is the flexibility that you can delay the activity without affecting the total duration of the project. Does that make sense? We have some techniques to figure out these numbers, total float and free float, but right now in this slide, we need to define these concepts: early start, early finish, late start, late finish, total float, and free float. To calculate these numbers and to start our scheduling, we have two bases. One is called forward base computation, which is starting from left to right. This is called forward base. We have another base, which is called backward base. To figure out the early start, early finish, and to figure out the duration of the project, we will start with the forward base computation. So add activity times along each path in the network. So early start plus duration can tell you the early finish. This point is very important. We have to remember it. Here is the activity. Here is the name or the ID of the activity. Here is the duration. This number represents the early start, and this number represents the early finish. If you have your early start, add early start plus duration can tell you the early finish. So early start plus duration will tell you the early finish of this activity. This is the meaning of this sentence. Add activity times the duration of each activity along each path in the network. Carry the early finish to the next activity where it becomes its early start unless there is a lag. We will cover this in the next video if we have a lag. So if you have an activity here and this activity is connected to other activities like this, the early start here, I'm sorry. The early finish here for this activity will be the same for early start here and the early start here. So this number will be the same like this number and will be the same like this number. These are the successors activities or the following activities. So after you finish this activity, I can start these two activities. That means the early finish of this activity will represent the same numbers for early start for this one and this one. This is the meaning of carry the early finish to the next activity where it becomes its early start. The next succeeding activity is a merge activity, in which case the largest early finish number of all its immediate predecessor activities is selected. Be careful about the largest. What does it mean? In this case, we have one activity here following with two activities. So I put the early finish here to be the early start and the early start. Sometimes we have this case. I have activity here and another activity here, and I have one activity here. And this one has following this activity, and this one is following by this activity. So we have something here because the early finish of this activity will have a number, and the early finish of this activity will have a different number. You mentioned before the early finish for the activity will be the same for early start for the following activity. Since in this case we have only one activity previously and we have two activities, so I put the early finish with this number and this number. It's the same. So if this one is 5, this one will be 5. This one will be 5. If this one is 6, this one will be 6. This one will be 6. That's fine. But how can I do it here? If this number is 5 and this number is 8, which early finish I'm gonna use to be the early start for the following activity? This is the meaning of this statement. I'm gonna use the largest early finish number. So I'm gonna use 8 and keep going. Does that make sense? So these two cases are very important. If we have one activity following by two, there is no problem. The number of early finish will be the same number for early start and early start for both of them. But if we have two activities following by one activity, which early finish I'm gonna use to be the early start here, I'm gonna use the biggest number. The biggest number. If we are moving forward, let's do an example and see how can we figure out the early start, the early finish, and the total duration of the project in the forward base. So I will start here. So if you start with early start 0, it will be 0 here also, because if you add 0 plus 0 will give you 0. So this is just a start. So activity A will start at day number 0. Activity B will start at day number 0, because the early finish here will be the same like early start here and the early start here, like we covered in this one. The early start, if this one is 0, so this one will be 0 and this one will be 0. That makes sense? Then I will add for activity A, I will add early start plus duration to give you the early finish. So 0 plus 8 will give you 8. Based on this information, early start plus duration equal early finish. The same for activity B, 0 plus 9 will be 9. For activity C, the predecessor for activity C is A only. So the early finish of this activity will be the same for early start with this activity, 8. We have only one arrow coming in to this activity, so the early finish will be the same like early start here. So 8 plus 6 will give you 14. For activity D, be careful about activity D, because activity D, we have two arrows coming in. We have two arrows coming in. The first arrow will give you 8 as early finish, so I should put here 8. The second arrow is coming from this activity B with early finish 9, so I can put here 9. So which number I'm gonna use, the early finish 9 or the early finish 8? I'm gonna use the biggest number, which is 9. This is the case we covered here. If we have two arrows coming in, so each arrow will give you a different number for the early finish. Which one I'm gonna use to be the early start? I'm gonna use the biggest number, the greatest number. Then for activity D, we have early start 9 plus 8 will give you the early finish 17. For activity E, we have only one arrow coming in, so the early finish here will be the early start here, 9. 9 plus 8 will give you 17. We are good. We are good. For activity F, so we have only one arrow coming into activity F. So the early finish here, 14, will be the early start here, 14. 14 plus 7 will give you 21. For G, for activity G, be careful because we have two arrows coming in. The first arrow will give you 14 as early finish here, so the early start should be 14. But the second arrow is giving you 17 as early finish. That means the early start here should be 17. Which number I'm gonna use? The greatest number, which is 17. 17 plus 9 will give you 26. The finish of the project, we have 3 arrows coming in the finish of the project. The first arrow will give you 21 early finish. The second arrow will give you 26. The third arrow will give you 17. Which early finish will be used? 26, the greatest number. We are moving forward. That means I'm going to use the biggest number, the greatest number. 26 plus 26 will be 26. Keep in your mind, this number will be the final duration of the project. This project will be done in 26 days, 26 weeks, 26 months, 26 years, whatever the unit, but the final duration of the project will be 26. Based on these numbers, I define the early start and the early finish for each activity. I defined the early start, early finish for each activity. So keep in your mind, the forward path computation will help you to figure out the early start, early finish for each activity. at the same time will help you to find the final duration of the project. Remember, when you are moving forward, we are going to use the largest number to be used at early start for the following activities. Be careful about this case. If we have one activity with one number here, early finish, this number will be used for both of them. If we have two activities coming in this activity, two arrows, so we have early finish and another early finish, which one I'm gonna use? The biggest number. That makes sense? This is if you would like to move forward. After you are done with the first forward path computation, we are going to go backward path computation. The backward path computation will help you. We are going back. It will help you to figure out the late finish and the late start of the project. Late finish and the late start of the project. Keep in your mind, if you have an activity like this one, this is the ID of the activity, this is the duration of the activity. Keep in your mind, if you are given the early start, I can tell you early start plus duration will give you the early finish. So early start plus duration will equal early finish. Right now, in this case, we are moving forward. If you are moving backward, the late finish will be given. Late finish minus duration will give you the late start. So late finish minus duration will give you the late start of the activity. Late finish minus duration, this one minus this one will give you late start. That makes sense? And this is the subtract activity times along each path, starting with the project end activity. So the late finish minus duration will give you the late start. This late start will be the same late finish for the predecessor activities. So the preceding activities, I'm gonna use the same late start to be the late finish, unless if we have a lag. This lag will be covered later. Keep in your mind, the next succeeding activity is a burst activity, in which case the smallest late start number of all its immediate successor activities is selected. If we are going backward, I'm gonna use the smallest number. What you mean? Okay. So keep in your mind, if we have an activity like this one, and we have predecessor activity, sometimes we have this case. Sometimes we have this case. So keep in your mind, we learned it before. If this is the early start, I will add the duration to figure out the early finish. This early finish will be the same like this early start. This number will be the same like this number. Then this early start plus duration will give you the excuse me, early finish. This is what we learned in the forward path. In the backward path, this late finish minus this duration will give you the late start. This late start will be the same like this late finish. So this number will be the same like this number. Then late finish minus duration will give you the late start and so on. Does that make sense? One more time. One more time. This early start for the project, this activity plus duration will give you the early finish. This early start for this activity plus duration will give you the early finish. We have two early finish. Which one I'm gonna use here to be the early start? I'm gonna use the biggest number to be the early start. So this one is the biggest. This is what we learned for the forward base. Then this early start plus duration will give you the early finish. So we have this one and this one. I'm gonna use the biggest number. Be careful. Be careful. If we have late finish here minus duration, late finish minus duration will give you the late start. This late start will be the same like this one and will be the same like this one. So this late start will be the same and this one will be the same. I'm sorry, this will be late finish, late finish. The same. This late finish will be minus duration will give you the late start, minus duration will give you the late start. That makes sense? The last case, if we have here early start plus duration will give you the early finish. This early finish will be the same here, early finish will be the same here, early finish plus duration will give you the early start, early start. Early start plus duration will be early finish, early start plus duration will be early finish. This is what we learned for the forward base. For the backward, we will have here late start minus duration will be, late finish minus duration will be late start. We have here another late finish probably, minus duration will be late start. Which late start I'm gonna use? If we are going backward, we have here a number, late start, we have here another number, late start. Which one I'm gonna use? I'm gonna use the smallest number. This one is the smallest. So if you are going backward and you have different numbers to be transferred to the next activity, I'm gonna use the smallest number. If you are moving forward and we have two numbers, which one I'm gonna use for the following activity? I'm gonna use the biggest number. This is the meaning of this statement. The smallest late start number of all its immediate successor activities is selected. Let's do an example. The example I started before and I finished the early start, early finish, and the duration of the project by moving forward. I am done. Let's move backward. So I'm gonna move backward. So I'm gonna start with the right. We have here 26. The finish of the project minus 0 will be also 26. This 26 will go back to this arrow, 26 will go back to this arrow, 26 will go back to this arrow, 26. So right now, I have the the late finish of activity F. If you would like to figure out the late start of activity F, you have to subtract. 26 minus 7 will be 19. The late finish for activity G is 26 minus 9. The duration will give you here, I think it will be 17. The late finish of activity E is 26. If you subtract 8, it will be here 18. So right now, I figured out after you have a late finish, I figured out the late start. This is late finish. I figured out the late start. Keep moving backward. So here you go. We have arrow coming back here with 19, and we have another arrow coming back to activity C with 17. Which one will go back to be the latest late finish here for activity C? I'm gonna use the smallest number, 17. So 17 minus 6 will be 9. For activity D, we have only one arrow can be coming back with 17. 17 minus 8 will be 9. So let's talk about activity A. We have two arrows can be coming back, one with 9 and one with another 9. So I can use 9. That's fine. 9 minus 8 will be 1. For activity B, we have two arrows coming back. This number is 9. This number is 18. Which one will be used to be the late finish of activity B? I'm going to use the smallest number, 9. 9 minus duration 9 will be 0. Does that make sense? So we have 0 and 1 coming back to the start. Which one I'm going to use? I'm going to use the smallest number, which is 0. 0 minus 0 will be 0. We are good. Does that make sense? So for the backward base, I succeeded to figure out the late finish and the late start for each activity. That makes sense? I would like to focus on how to calculate the total float and the free float. Keep in your mind, each activity or each activity can have a total float and the free float, both of them. So each of these floats indicates an amount of flexibility associated with an activity. Most of the time, the total float is greater than or equal the free float. And keep in your mind, the total float is the flexibility of time for any activity without affecting the final duration of the project. Free float is the flexibility of time for any activity to be delayed without affecting the immediate following activity. If you would like to figure out the total float in a very simple way, equal late start minus early start, or late finish minus early finish. Let me explain it here in more details. So here is the ID of the activity, here is the duration, here is the early start, here is the early finish, here is the late start, here is the late finish. So far, we learned that early start plus duration will give you the early finish. We learned that late finish minus duration will equal late start. Keep in your mind, late start minus early start will give you the total float. This number minus this number. The absolute value, late start minus early start. Or late finish minus early finish will give you the total float. This number minus this number will give you the total float. So the total float equal late start minus early start, or late finish minus early finish. This is the total float. So if you look to these activities after you are done with the forward base and the backward base, I can tell you the value of the total float for each activity. For this one, 1 minus 0 is 1, or 9 minus 8 is 1. 11 minus 8 equal 3, or 17 minus 14 equal 3. 19 minus 14 equal 5, or 26 minus 21. 0 minus 0 is 0. 9 minus 9 is 0, or 17 minus 17. 17 minus 17 is 0, or 26 minus 26. 18 minus 9 is 9, or 26 minus 17. So these numbers representing the total float. Just subtract this number minus this number, or this number minus this number can tell you the total float. To explain it in more details, this activity A can be delayed for 1 day or 1 week or 1 month, whatever the unit, without affecting the 26 total duration of the project. Activity C can be delayed for 3 days, for example, 3 days, without affecting the total duration of the project, 26. Activity F can be delayed. We have flexibility to delay this activity by 5 days without affecting the total duration of the project, 26. Activity D is critical. We cannot delay activity D. If activity D is delayed a little bit, the final duration of the project will be affected. Activity E can be delayed for 9 days without affecting the final duration of the project. This is the meaning of total float. For free float, which is the amount of time without delaying any immediately following or successor activities, can be calculated by the lowest early start of successors minus early finish. What you mean? We have here two successors. This one and this one are successors for this activity A. So I'm gonna use the lowest early start. We have here early start 8. We have here early start 9. I'm gonna use the lowest number, 8, minus the early finish for activity A. Early finish here is 8, so 8 minus 8 will be 0. One more time. We have here two successors. This activity D and E, two successors for B. We have here 9 early start and we have here 9 early start. I'm gonna use the smallest or the lowest number, which is 9. 9 minus early finish here, 9 will be 0. One more time. For activity C, we have two successors, F and G. This one has early start 14. This one has early start 17. I'm gonna use the lowest one, 14. 14 minus early finish for activity C will be 0. One more time. For activity D, we have two successors. I'm sorry, we have only one successor, which is G. One successor, G for D. So we have 17 minus 17 will be 0. Early start for the successor minus early finish for the predecessor. Does that make sense? Let's do it for F. For F, we have only one successor with 26 early start. And this one has early finish 21. That means we have 5. This one has 26, has one successor with 26 early start. And this one was early finish 26, so it will be 0. We have here 26 early start, and we have here 17 early finish. That means we have around 9. These numbers, which is 5, means this activity can be delayed for 5 days without affecting the following activity. Another example for the I will go through this example from scratch to figure out the forward pass and the backward pass and the total floats and the free floats calculation. But remember how to calculate the total float and the free float. The total float is calculated from one activity only. If we have activity here, this number minus this number or this number minus this number will give you the total float. For the free float, no. We have an activity and we have successors. So how do you know they are successful? We have two arrows. That means these activities are successful. So the early start here and the early start here, which one I'm gonna use? The lowest one. Minus the late start, I'm sorry, the early finish here. If you subtract the lowest number minus the early finish, I can tell you what is the free float for this activity. Does that make sense? Let's do one more example. I will start it from scratch. So let's start with the forward base. So for the start, 0 plus 0 equals 0. This 0 will be the same here and will be the same here for activity A and B, because A and B are the starting activities of the project. For activity A, 0 plus 8 will be 8. For activity B, 0 plus 8 will be 8. For activity C, we have only one predecessor, 8, so we will have 8 here, the same. Early finish here will be the early start. 8 plus 6 will be 14. For activity D, we have only one predecessor, 8. We will have 8 here, plus 7 will be 15. For activity E, we have only one predecessor, 8. We will have 8 here, plus 9 will be 17. Looks like I missed one arrow here. We should have one arrow here, like this. This one is missing. I'm sorry. So for activity F, the predecessor is 14. 14 plus 7 will be 21. For activity G, we have two predecessors. Activity D will give you 15. Activity E will give you 17. I'm going to use the biggest number because we are going forward. So I'm going to use 17. 17 plus 6 will be 23. The finish of the project, we have here 21, we have here 23. I'm going to use 23 plus 0 is 23. 23 will be the final duration of the project. So the total duration of this project will be 23 days or weeks or months, whatever the unit. So I figured out the early start, early finish, total duration of the project when I did the forward base. If you would like to do the backward base, so I'm gonna start with the total duration of the project, 23 minus 0 will be 23. This 23 will be the same here, 23 at the late finish for each activity F and G. 23 minus 7 will be 16. 23 minus 6 will be 17. For activity C, the 16 will be the same here, 16. 16 minus 6 will be 10. For activity D, 17 will be the late finish, 17 here, minus 7 will be 10. For activity E, 17 will be the same here, 17, minus 9 will be 8. For activity B, we have 8 can be coming back, we have 10 can be coming back. Which one I'm gonna use, 10 or 8? Since we are going backward, I'm gonna use the smallest number, 8. 8 minus 8 will be 0. We have here 10 early start. I'm sorry, late start will be the late finish here. 10 minus 8 will be 2. To go back word, we have 2 here and we have 0. Which one I'm gonna use? I'm gonna use 0, the smallest number. 0 minus 0 will be 0. We are good. So the backward pass helped you to figure out the late start, late finish for each activity. Then I will figure out the total float, free float, total float, free float for each activity. For this one, 2 minus 0 will be 2, or 10 minus 8. 10 minus 8 will be 2, or 16 minus 14. 16 minus 14 will be 2, or 23 minus 21. 0 minus 0 will be 0, or 8 minus 8. 10 minus 8 will be 2. 8 minus 8 will be 0. 17 minus 17 will be 0. These numbers are the total float for each activity. These are the flexibility that we can delay the activity without affecting the total duration of the project, which is 23. Activity B is critical, cannot be delayed. Activity E is critical, cannot be delayed. Activity G is critical, cannot be delayed. These activities B, E, G are critical. We will define them later. If you would like to figure out the free float, so For this one, the successor is C. The early start is 8. So the difference between early start and the early finish, 8 minus 8 will be 0. For this activity C, the successor is F. The early start here is 14. The early finish here is 14. So if you subtract both of them will be 0. For activity B, we have two successors. Both of them has early start 8 and 8. Which one I'm going to use? The lowest one. So it's 8 minus 8 will be 0. For activity D, the successor is G only with 17. So 17 early start minus 15 early finish, it will be 2. For activity E, we have only one successor, G, with early start 17 minus 17 will be 0. Does that make sense? For activity F, the following is 23 minus 21 will be 2. The following is 23 early start, and the early finish here is 23, so it will be 0. Does that make sense? So looks like activity D has free float 2 days. That means this activity can be delayed for 2 days without affecting the following activity G. Does that make sense? So this how to calculate the scheduling of the project, how to figure out the early start, early finish, late start, late finish, total float, and free float.